Joining me now is California Democratic Congressman Khanna. Thanks for joining us, Congressman. Let's start with the situation in Texas. Obviously, our thoughts are with the victims and their families. State and local officials have raised concerns about the National Weather Service forecasting, which called for 7 inches of rain for Friday when they received nearly double that. According to the concern is reporting from the New York Times that key weather service positions at local offices were vacant Friday morning due to staff shortages related to Trump administration cutbacks. What's your take on all of this?
Well, Reverend, first of all, it's just heart-wrenching and devastating. My heart goes out to the community and all of the families, especially the parents of those young girls. Look, without politicizing this should be a wake-up call to the country. You don't cut funding for the National Weather Service. You don't cut funding for FEMA, regardless of whether that contributed to the tragedy. We know that there are unfortunately going to be more incidents of flooding, more storms, especially given climate change. And it is absolutely atrocious and irresponsible for these cuts to be taking place. I hope every Republican will call for the reversal so that we can staff up FEMA and that we can staff up the Weather Service.
And we're only at the beginning of the hurricane season, so this is something that we ought to really be looking at. President Trump this afternoon signed a disaster declaration for the Texas counties affected by the flooding and activated FEMA. Now, Governor Abbott's office said just last month the state was ready to handle its own emergencies as President Trump tries to wind down FEMA. Your state of California has seen its share of natural disasters lately. What are your thoughts on a FEMA-less future where states have to negotiate directly with this White House for aid?
It's betraying the American people. Look, we had the problem when we didn't get the federal resources we needed with the wildfires in Los Angeles. And I don't want to see that happen with Texas. We're all Americans. We need a strong FEMA to help when you have crises and storms, whether that be in California or whether that be in Texas. In our party, the Democratic Party, we believe that we help people in any state. I voted for aid every single time, whether it be a red state or a blue state. And this is a time that hopefully we can come together as a country and recognize that cutting FEMA, cutting the National Weather Service is hurting Americans. This is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue.
Now, let's shift our focus to the Republican spending bill President Trump signed into law this 4th of July weekend, which extends tax cuts for the wealthy while slashing health care and other benefits for the poor and working people, all while adding trillions to the national debt over the next decade. What, in your view, is the most concerning part of this massive piece of legislation?
Reverend, it's not just the awful Medicaid cuts. This is a backdoor repeal of President Obama's Affordable Care Act. They are taking away some of the subsidies that have allowed for the expansion of health insurance for people to get on Medicaid. They are taking away the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Premiums for people who are on the exchange are going to go up 75 to 100%. This is Trumpflation when it comes to health care. This is the Trump rate hike when it comes to health insurance. It's not just going to hurt people on Medicaid. It's going to hurt everyone in this country who's on the exchange, and probably a lot of premiums are going to go up as a result. It is just a disastrous bill to give tax breaks for billionaires.
Now, the fiscal irresponsibility of this bill was apparently too much for Trump's former best friend, BFF, Elon Musk. He's announcing his own America party this weekend. Back in the early days of Doge, you offered to work with Musk if he was really serious about cutting government waste. Are you still willing to engage in a dialogue with him, and should other Democrats do the same?
Well, he didn't take me up on the serious cuts, which would have been the fossil fuel subsidies, which would have been the defense contractors, which would have been going after big pharma. Instead, he engaged in unconstitutional actions, cutting U.S. aid, cutting veterans benefits. What I will say is now we see the fissure between him and Trump. He's opposed to the tariffs. He's opposed to the ban on international students. He's opposed to the electric vehicle tax credit repeals. But I don't think the Democrats should embrace Musk. What I do think is we should push to make sure that these platforms like X are neutral, because it really hurt Vice President Harris when those platforms were skewed to just pushing Trump's propaganda. And hopefully now he's not going to put his thumb on the scale of benefiting Trump and Vance.
Switching gears, it's been less than 3 weeks since you and Republican Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie introduced a war powers resolution meant to limit President Trump's ability to further engage in conflict in Iran. The Defense Department now, Iran's nuclear capability has only been set back 1 or 2 years. The president has insisted their nuke sites were obliterated. And we learn more. As we learn more, are you feeling strong in your conviction that this president should make his case to Congress should he wish to continue using force against Iran?
Absolutely. What he did was unconstitutional. But more than that, it was a betrayal of the American people. I am tired, Reverend, of us spending billions of dollars on missiles in the Middle East, of sending more troops in the Middle East. I'd rather we be investing that money in our community to build more housing, to create good-paying jobs, to have higher wages. And instead, Trump betrayed his promise of not getting more engaged. He's increased troops there. And I believe the American people don't want more of these conflicts. And by the way, Iran still has nuclear fuel to create 10 nuclear bombs. So he has not achieved a solution the way President Obama did with the JCPOA.
Finally, Congressman, I want to ask you about a question about the future of the Democratic Party and, in particular, its progressive wing. There's a lot of excitement here in New York City about a young left-leaning mayoral candidate. You've spoken a great deal about finding the next generation of progressive voices at a national level. As we reach the 6-month point in the Trump presidency, are you seeing signs of life in your party? And could you see yourself leading the charge, perhaps as a presidential candidate in 2028?
I see a lot of life. I see a life around an agenda of Medicare for all, not having bloated defense budgets, good paying jobs investment here, increasing the minimum wage, having universal child care. And I believe that there are going to be new voices in this party. You're having Governor Beshear on, who I have a lot of respect for. But we need 10, 15 new voices in the party to lead forward. Of course, I believe it needs to be in a progressive direction and around something I call new economic patriotism, good paying jobs, low cost, no new wars.
And are you flirting, thinking, considering running for president in 2028?
Well, I'm focused right now making Hakeem Jeffries speaker. That has to be all of our sense. But I'll tell you something about Zohran Mamdani, because I know that there's been questions about the Indian American, African American. I'll tell you something just on my story as an Indian American. I wouldn't be born in America if it weren't for the African American civil rights struggle that led to the Immigration Reform Act that allowed my parents to come here. And by the way, that struggle was inspired by Gandhi and this freedom movement that my grandfather was in. And I am tired of people trying to divide the Indian American and African American community. It's actually the most intertwined freedom movements. And, you know, John Lewis wrote about that. And I'm excited about a multiracial coalition around a progressive agenda that's going to win for the next 20 years and defeat the forces of hate, that division that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance represent.
Well, I certainly agree with you. Dr. King was a real proponent of Gandhi, and I grew up raised by his lieutenants. But you did duck my question about 2028, but we'll go to that next time. California Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you for joining us.